education and information. See what all the buzz is all about. It's time for hemp. It's time for hemp. An acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Right now, it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I am your host, Casper Leitch. You are listening to Time for Hemp on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and any place on the internet that you can find sound, you will find Time for Hemp. It is Tuesday, and on Tuesday we put a spotlight on all the amazing activists that are making a difference up in Canada with my joint host, Kriston. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Casper. How you doing today?
Pretty groovy. We got an exciting. We always have good guests on, but this gentleman, I tell you, he is the epitome of the hemp movement. He writes books. He gets involved with organizations. He gets involved with events. He is, to me, just the perfect example of a hardworking activist.
Awesome. And who is our guest today?
Dana Larson. Good morning, Dana.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for that wonderful introduction.
But it's true. I mean, you really are. If I had to say, give you a perfect example of a hardworking activist who's doing what they can to educate the world around them about the need to end marijuana prohibition and reintroduce hemp back into the farm community, I would say, go study Dana Larson's last 15 years of living.
I'm going to say you missed one. I think he's quite politically active as well.
There you go.
I'm proud to have been involved in the pot movement for the last 20 years and accomplished, and so I appreciate all your wonderful comments there. It's nice to be recognized.
Absolutely. You're definitely well known within the movement, of course. Anybody who is involved in the movement in Canada certainly is aware of you, and I know that the people of Vancouver are more than aware of you because of your political involvement and like you say, with the 420 events and just basically everything that's going on there. It's obviously a very big part of your life.
Well, and there's exciting times in Vancouver, Canada here. We've got so much going on. There's honeys that are operating in the city, and they're talking about giving us business licenses and also talking about trying to shut a bunch of these places down while they give the rest of us business licenses. So that's an exciting and challenging time right now for all the dispensaries in the city, and there's so much going on in Vancouver. It's very exciting these days.
Well, of course, with the new government in place and who knows what's to come, hopefully we're only going to get better. I truly believe that Vancouver has been the cannabis capital of Canada for quite some time. A lot going on there, a lot of involvement out there, much more forward thinking than the rest of us, certainly here in Alberta, where we don't have anything on the go. There's no coffee shops, there's no vape lounges, there's no dispensaries, there's nothing. So we're much more looking forward, I think, than the rest of you, because you've already sort of surpassed us more than a decade ago. You're ahead of us out there, and I'm sure that it's due to the hard work of you and all of the people around you. And so many people in Vancouver are very involved, and that's
well, we have we've changed Vancouver quite a bit over the years. Vancouver is a cannabis and drug kind of city in some ways because we're a port city, and so there's always that coming and going. But we've also definitely transformed this city over the last decades through activism and civil disobedience. When we first started this 20 years ago, you couldn't buy a bong or a pipe in Vancouver, and now there's not only head shops and vapor lounges, but dispensaries and everything all over the place. So the city's definitely changed a lot in its attitude over the years as well.
Without question, I'm look forward to some type of a similar situation happening here in Calgary and Edmonton in the near future with legalization and, of course, whichever direction they go, hopefully sooner than later. And have you got anything on that front? Obviously, with the dispensaries there, you're having problems, like you say. They're looking at moving forward with going with licenses, yet they're still raiding places and doing that type of stuff. I mean, is there any kind of consensus, or is it enforcement against political will? Or
well, it's very confusing in Canada right now, as you know, because we're supposedly on the verge of legalization, but nothing's happened to change the law yet. Harper's mandatory minimums are still in place and still being enforced. Just read an article about a guy who's looking at 6 months in jail for growing 30 plants in his own home. And he's looking at 6 months in prison, mandatory minimum. And, in Vancouver, we've got dispensaries selling marijuana all over the place, over 100 in the city. There's many more in other cities in British Columbia as well. Victoria's got like 30 or something dispensaries. There's 6 in a little town called Port Alberni, and many other cities have got them. But it's such a weird situation right now where Vancouver's are giving out business licenses to dispensaries, but they're still not legal under federal law. And in Vancouver, they put together the dispensaries that are incredibly restrictive and will result probably in over half to 2/3 of the current dispensaries having to shut down or fight with the city. They not only have to be away from schools and community centers twice the distance that liquor, but we also have to be 300 meters apart from each other. And so they want to what they call decluster the dispensaries. I don't know what the problem is having 2 dispensaries close to each other. If the market demands that there, be more dispensaries, they'll be there. But the city says they're not going to raid dispensaries. They're going to use, other means, fines and business licenses and the bureaucracy to deal with how many dispensaries there are. So it's a very weird situation. In the next year, we're going to see dispensaries opening up faster than the rate of 1 a day. And so we are really overgrowing the government, in terms of pushing forward. What's happening right now federally is Trudeau has said he's going to legalize. He's appointed Bill Blair, who's an MP, but the former chief of police for Toronto, to be the point person on legalization. He's supposed to come up with some kind of committee and get the provinces involved and have some hearings and all this stuff, but nothing's really happened. And they say it could be years. So one thing we've done as activists is put together a petition. We have a new system in Canada now where you can have online petitions that if you get enough signatures, the government has to respond. And so we've got a couple petitions going forward now. And the one we wrote is very comprehensive. We're in 4th place in terms of signature numbers right now. And all the ones ahead of us have been there a very long time. And this petition, we call for them to stop arrests for marijuana possession and personal cultivation right now. And then when we legalize it, include personal cultivation, include the right of farmers, Canadian farmers who are already growing hemp, to be able to harvest their resins. And for everybody who's got a criminal record for marijuana can have that criminal record expunged, and to leave it to the provinces to figure out the details of what happens. Because in Canada, alcohol and tobacco are dealt with mostly provincially. The age limits and points of sale are dealt with at the provincial level. We want the provinces to be the ones in charge of legalization and not some complicated federal program. So this petition, if you're a Canadian, you can sign this petition, and the more signatures we get and we have, and the more we're showing the Canadians.
Sounds awesome. And where do we find this petition online?
The e-petition system in Canada, it'll come up. Or if you go to petitions.parl for parliament.gc for government of Canada.ca, and that gets you to the page. If you search for cannabis, our petition will come up. There's a couple of other ones as well. There's another one specifically calling for home cultivation to be included. And there's a separate one calling for medical marijuana to not be taxed. In a court decision in Canada recently that says medical marijuana must be taxed because it's not a prescription, oddly enough. But this petition is saying we shouldn't be putting tax on medical marijuana. It's a medicine. In Canada, medicines aren't. So this petition system has actually got 3 petitions going now, and I bet more marijuana ones are going to crop up as well in the future.
That one strikes me as interesting, not, for the medical patient. It's not a prescription, but yet I do believe you have to go to your doctor and basically get a prescription to be legal.
Yeah, it's everything but a prescription. The federal government really is ridiculous on this. It's actually harder to get than a regular prescription, but they call it a recommendation. By doing that, instead of it being a prescription, it changes a lot of the rules. When it's not a prescription, when it's only a recommendation, that means you have to pay GST or tax on the marijuana. It also means that the doctor can charge you for filling out a form. In Canadian healthcare system, a doctor cannot charge you for a prescription. They have to bill the government for that separately, and they don't get paid a lot. But to fill out paperwork, charge a patient arbitrary fees to fill out paperwork. And so this marijuana recommendation is considered paperwork, which is why doctors can charge patients hundreds of dollars to fill out the marijuana paperwork form. But if it was a prescription, they legally couldn't charge you any. Another way of them nickel and diming patients and kind of scamming us in regards to marijuana medicine.
Do you know if there's a limit on these fees, or is it a free-for-all? If you've got to fill out the paperwork, you can charge what you deem.
Yeah, some doctors charge hundreds of dollars for marijuana prescriptions or marijuana recommendations. And because many other doctors don't want to fill out these forms and don't want to do it, finding a doctor who can do it is a godsend for many patients. There's some doctors who do it by Skype in Canada, where you can log into this doctor in Victoria while you're in Toronto, and they'll look at your paperwork. They won't diagnose you, but if you and you've got your stuff from your doctor, they'll look at it, they'll sign it for you, and they'll charge you $300 or $400 for a 15-minute consultation and paperwork signing. You know, for the patient, sometimes they're very grateful because they couldn't find anybody else, but it's still a scam. That doctor is still making, ridiculous amounts of money on the backs of the sick who need it, and that's not really right. So it's a really shitty situation in Canada for patients who either have to struggle to find a doctor or someone who will help them with medical cannabis for an outrageous fee of a few $100s.
Yes, and for a lot of these patients, they're on not much income, sometimes no income or an assisted income or whatever, disability pension, and they can hardly afford anything, let alone any extra fees.
Well, of course, cannabis produced, we only pay so much for it because of prohibition. It's a plant shouldn't cost much more than the world's best lettuce to buy in the grocery store. We should be, selling cannabis by the pound, not by the gram and the ounce. And so, that's why I think home cultivation is very important to include, because it helps act as a price control and keep the price down. If you can grow your own cannabis, the more expensive illegal stuff gets, the more likely you are to bypass that and just grow your own. And, I don't think most Canadians should have to grow their own. They should be able to buy it in a store, but they shouldn't have to pay outrageous prices. And if they want to grow it themselves, they should be able to, just like any other plant.
I agree. I mean, why not? And if they go obviously, like you say, more than likely the provincial route, because that's what they do with other products, like you say, alcohol and tobacco. If they go provincially, are they going to sell it through, Alberta's different than in British Columbia, where we have privatized liquor stores where you can purchase liquor. So as a result, we have, probably 5-10 times more liquor stores in our, per capita than you probably do out there. So it creates a little bit different of a problem in that aspect. If they go through the same type of stores, obviously it seems would be a lot more open in Alberta because then, it's in a lot of private hands, whereas to the other provinces, it's all done through government agencies.
Well, you're absolutely right. It would be an irony there that Alberta, which is not a very marijuana-friendly province, if we end up regulating marijuana the same way we do alcohol, Alberta could have one of the most free systems for marijuana in the country. Right. Because other provinces are quite restrictive. Ontario is very restrictive, have a strict government monopoly, very hard to get alcohol in many ways in Ontario, whereas in BC, they just loosen things up. We're allowed to have beer gardens now. You can bring your kids into the beer garden with you while you have some drinks. And so, we want to see more cannabis as well. Really, cannabis should be much more readily available than alcohol, but we'll settle as available as alcohol to begin with.
Well, and we got some other problems to resolve here. We got to pay our bills for one, and then we're going to try to reconnect with Dana and get a better connection on his mic at the same time. So with that said, we're off to commercial. And then we're going to listen to a groovy song about how fantastic marijuana is. And then when we come back, we're going to pick up where we left off here at Time for Hemp.
This may sound strange, but I want to pay taxes. See, I don't drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes. I relax with something science has proven is much safer, marijuana. And I want to buy it somewhere that charges taxes to pay for schools and roads, just like alcohol and tobacco. What do you think should profit? Are schools and roads or drug dealers?
Visit the Marijuana Policy Project Foundation at joinmpp.org or call 1-877-JOIN-MPP.
Georgia.
Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Uno, dos, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right to the point and roll me a joint, the marijuana polka. Find me a dove and we'll call it love, the marijuana polka. Flick me your mitt and we'll get off real quick, the marijuana polka. My baby and I will get so high to the marijuana polka. Now roll me a smoke, yeah, give me a toke, the marijuana polka. Lock up the doors and we'll wax up the floors, the marijuana polka. Yeah, give me a line and we'll dance all night, the marijuana polka. My baby and I will get so high to the marijuana polka. Break out your lid, now don't keep it in. The marijuana polka. Come sing along and we'll load up the bomb. The marijuana polka. I roll up sometimes and watch for the cops. The marijuana polka. My baby and I will get so high to the marijuana polka. Señorita, sí, sí, señorita, sí, sí. La marijuana polka. Federales on no, federales on no. La marijuana polka. Tequila es bien, panocha también. La marihuana polka. Mi linda y yo somos bichatos. La marihuana polka. Borrachos, míranos, todos borrachos. Señorita, sí, sí, señorita, sí, sí. La marihuana polka. Federales, oh no, federales, oh no. La marihuana polka. Tequila es bien, panocha también. La marihuana polka. Mi linda y yo somos bichatos. La marihuana polka. My baby and I will get so high to the marijuana
Good golly, Miss Molly, I am all tuckered out from dancing around here in the studio, kicking up my heels and doing the marijuana polka. And those of you who listen to this broadcast know that is one of my favorite all-time songs. I play it at least once a month on my broadcast, and I dance around to it every day, at least 3 times a day here at Time for Hemp. With that said, I want to put a spotlight on somebody who does a remarkable job for the medical cannabis movement, and that is Kelly Kriston and his team, who make it possible for people who are sick, who need medical cannabis. And Kelly and his team make it possible for people who are very ill to be able to afford to take their medical cannabis in a very healthy manner. Right, Kelly?
Absolutely. We've been running a program now for several years where we give away a free vaporizer to a medical patient anywhere in the world. Super simple. All you have to do to qualify to get a free vaporizer is, number one, you got to be a medical patient or use cannabis for any ailment. Doesn't matter what it is. We're not picky on that particular point, but as long as you're using cannabis for a medicinal purpose. The other requirement is that you basically can't afford one. You're on a disability pension, old age pension, no income at all. Whatever the case may be, there's a lot of medical patients out there that are on some type of assisted income. And of course, most of these people find it difficult, especially if they live in a larger urban center where rents are more expensive, and the cost of having a place to stay and putting food in your belly and then hoping to buy medication to make yourself feel a little better. At the end of the day, there's usually not a lot of money left over for something as a vaporizer, which no doubt they would consider a luxury item. So if you fall into that category, or if you're listening and you know somebody that could use a free vaporizer and could never afford one, please, by all means, all you got to do is send them my email, which is Kelly, Kelly, at kdkwholesale.ca. Tell us a little bit about yourself, if you're involved in the movement in any way or anything like that. It's always nice to hear. And yeah, we pull you from the hat and we will ship it to you absolutely free. It'll arrive on your door and you can start using it immediately.
And on behalf of the medical marijuana movement, thank you, Kelly. That's very kind of you and your team to do that. And with that said, we're going back to our joint chat with our joint host here in the Big Joint broadcast with my joint host here at Time for Hemp.
Speaking of joint, is anybody smoking one at the moment? Yeah, there it goes. We're waiting to hear that.
I got a nice fatty here in Vancouver as well, and I've been smoking that, of course.
So what's in store for Dana here in the near future? Are we gonna? We know you've got all these books out. For those of you that are listening and maybe don't know about Dana and his penmanship, maybe you can tell us your wonderful list of books you have available.
Sure. Well, I've got a few books out now and more to come, and I'm really actually pushing this publishing thing and starting a publishing company here for books by me and some of my other activist friends. But I got a book out called Harry Pothead and the Marijuana Stone. We just reprinted it for the 4th time. I've been selling this book for about 7 years now, and it's a fun parody of Harry Potter with a big marijuana theme to it, and it's got a dozen full-color illustrations, and I'm quite proud of it. It's funny and educational, and I think you can enjoy it. Check out harrypothead.net. That's H-A-I-R-Y, because he's Harry. And I've also got a book called Green Buds and Hash, which is also a parody. This one is a parody of the Dr. Seuss book, Green Eggs and Ham, and it's beautifully illustrated, very Seussian style, and it's a fun little parody with the medical marijuana twist at the end that I also think people will enjoy. But the book that I've really put the most work into, and that's really, I think, the most meaningful, is called The History of Cannabis in Canada, or Cannabis in Canada, The Illustrated History. And this book I've been working on for over 20 years now, and it's just come out a few months ago. It's oversized. It's black and white, fully illustrated. Every page is a beautiful piece of art to look at. And it tells a story of cannabis in Canada from 1606 right up till the election of Trudeau in modern times. And I think everybody will learn a lot about the early history of cannabis in Canada. I know I did writing it, and what an important role this plant has played in our country's history, how there were doctors and patients using medical cannabis in Canada for 100 years, from the mid-1800s to the mid-1900s. First Canadian busted for marijuana possession bought pre-rolled joints at a pharmacy in Vancouver and was charged for that. Much like it is now, very confusing times in terms of what's legal and what isn't. But the story of how cannabis was important to Canada and how it was banned in Canada, with the RCMP, literally burning hemp fields down in the 1930s and threatening farmers, busting pharmacies, taking medical marijuana products out. It's a fascinating story, and one that hasn't been told before, and which I'm very proud to be able to have been put together. And cannabishistory.ca is where to find that book. And I actually, to help promote it, I sent a free copy of my book and a gram of marijuana to every one of Canada's Liberal members of Parliament. And it caused quite a kerfuffle. They all got quite worked up. Some of them thought it was kind of funny, but then they got the word from the headquarters that they couldn't be joking about this. And some of them called the RCMP to take away my gram of marijuana that I'd sent them through the mail. And we got quite a bit of controversy. But hopefully it also encouraged some Canadians to get a copy of my book and learn the history of cannabis in Canada, because that's what it's all about. So those are my 3 books that I have out right now anyways. I got more coming, but those are the big 3. And I think even Americans will be interested in reading the history of cannabis in Canada, because it's got a lot of information that I think will help people understand the story around the world and how these laws came into place, and the really important role some Canadians played. People know about Harry Anslinger, the American who was the big narc who really brought in a lot of the war on drugs and war on marijuana, but few folks have heard of Colonel Sharman, who was the Canadian, who was Harold Anslinger's soulmate, and this guy was the first head of the UN anti-drug committees. He made sure that all these UN committees were stocked with police officers and cops and not doctors and health officials, and was highly influential. He was the guy that came up with conspiracy, the idea that if you conspire to break a drug law, you're just as guilty. And so there's a lot of good stuff in these books, and I hope people will be interested and try to grab a copy through the mail. We do mail order all around the world, and check them out for themselves.
Cool. At the end of the show, we'll get you to put in a plug for that, where everybody can get access to it.
Well, I think it's important to get information out to people. In Canada, bongs and pipes and books about growing marijuana are still illegal. These laws are not always that enforced, but Canadians got some terrible laws on the books here still, and bizarrely, in a country where there's hundreds of marijuana dispensaries opening and selling cannabis, it's actually still against the law to sell bongs, to sell vaporizers. It's against the law to promote the use of cannabis. It's against the law to sell books about how to grow your own cannabis. It's a very bizarre situation in this country. And that's why I say that the marijuana movement in Canada is our biggest civil disobedience movement ever, because we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of Canadians now, making a living off of civil disobedience and breaking the law openly. And I think it's unprecedented in Canadian history.
I would agree that I don't think any law in our history has ever been so blatantly basically abused or not abused, ignored by the general public.
Yeah, I think it's really wonderful, actually, the kind of people power that we have, and that people are brave enough to get together and to rise up against what they see as an injustice. Makes me proud to be a Canadian, but it also makes me frustrated that our governments refuse to change these laws after so many years, so many decades, even though Canadians clearly don't want them on the books. People say that Justin Trudeau was going to legalize, but I always say that Pierre Trudeau, Justin's dad, who was prime minister in the 70s and early, that he was actually the one who's legalized, because it's his Charter of Rights that he put in that has allowed all these court cases that support marijuana to go through. It's all because of the Charter of Rights that we have, and that was something that Pierre Trudeau brought into Canada. That's how we got medical marijuana. That's how we've been able to defy a lot of these laws and go after them, is because they've been deemed unconstitutional because of the Charter. So it's interesting how Canadian history has played out on this issue.
Absolutely, and it was obviously back in '72 when they first started with the commission and recommended that cannabis would do more harm, as in being made illegal than being legalized. So it's
famous
a long
Ledain Commission.
Long time in coming. 72
Well, and then more recently, Canada's Senate put out a report in 2005, I think it was, saying it was the most comprehensive report ever done, I think, in the world on marijuana, and they recommended it be legalized for sale to everybody over 16. They thought that the 16 years should be the age limit, and yet they're still in Canada. We get all these amazing reports and documents and studies done by the government, and then they ignore their own research and refuse to act on it for generations. It's quite disgusting, really.
I agree for sure. But interesting note that at what part the Trudeau family is going to have in legalizing cannabis, like you say, as far back as his dad getting things rolling with the Charter of Rights, which is really, really a huge thing. I don't know if many Canadians, younger Canadians, are aware of what happened and how that came about. It's pretty amazing. And here in Alberta, I think the only thing that Albertans remember about Pierre Trudeau was his national energy program, where
he's not Pierre Trudeau's not so popular in Alberta, I guess, but there is these changes have been happening in Canada for decades and decades. It takes a long time for these things to come to fruition, but I do hope we're going to see legalization actually happening under Justin Trudeau in the next year or two. And if they don't do it, we're just going to do it ourselves by just having so many dispensaries and so many people breaking the law that nobody cares about the law anymore. And I think that may end up being how it goes.
But what I wanted to mention about the National Energy Program was that it's actually a program that saved the oil industry in Alberta. Yes, at the time it really hurt the economy, and 200 American oil rigs were pulled out of here, and people were having to sell their homes for $1, and it was really terrible for a couple of years. But he knew, and he kept oil for Canada, and that's what happened. Eventually, all the American oil rigs did come back into Canada. But what Mr. Trudeau did was save save oil for Canada and keep it out of the hands of our neighbors to the south. So really, we have to thank him for that as well.
Well, there you go.
Well, hopefully the rest of the Albertans that are listening, or any Albertans that are listening, will realize that he was instrumental in keeping Canadian oil in Canadian hands.
Well, let's keep Canadian weed in Canadian hands too, hey, and make sure that we get to grow it here and it's not all controlled by multinational corporations with some kind of prohibition on regular Canadians getting involved, because it looks like that's how the government wants it to go. And we got to stop that from happening and make sure that legalization means that everybody can grow and use and participate in a legal market, and not only a half dozen companies. We don't want Monsanto weed being the only option.
That's for sure, and I'm a firm believer in the free market process. I think there's room for everybody. We've talked earlier shows about these similar models where you have microbreweries and you have micro grows. You have the big multinationals where your big companies that are mass producing, and you have companies that are producing in smaller batches and making more blends or that type of thing. And also the home-grown market where people are brewing their own beers or making their own wines. I think there's room for everybody out there. There is room for the big companies who want to have a piece of the pie. There's room for guys who love to grow and want to make a superior product, maybe in smaller quantities. And then they're just the home-growing guy who wants to do his own thing. I think there's room for everybody in a free market.
I agree with that absolutely. But the challenge is that we have in Canada these licensed producers, these 24 companies who are legally growing marijuana, selling it to patients by mail order. And they've all invested millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars in these sophisticated indoor grow operations with high security to meet all of the standards of the Health Canada requirements, which are really way too strict and severe. But now that they've done that, they're out there saying they want no one else to be able to sell marijuana. They want the government to shut down all these dispensaries. They want to make it difficult for anybody else to get a license like they got a license. And they really want to have a monopoly on marijuana in Canada. And it's worrisome because these guys have got deep pockets and they've got ties to the Liberal Party, or at least one of them does. The biggest company is called Canopy, also called Tweed. Canopy owns Tweed, and Tweed's been buying up several of the other medical marijuana companies, and they're like a $500 million company now. They don't even really sell that much marijuana yet. I'm pretty sure our dispensary probably sells more pot than Tweed does, but they're a $500 million company, and their former CEO, the guy who really founded it, was also the chief financial officer for the Canadian Liberal Party. So these guys are going to want regulations and laws in place that make it difficult for their competition, that make it difficult for you to grow your own, that will shut down dispensaries, and that will let them be the big player. And I don't mind, like you're saying, there should be big companies involved. We have no problem with a big company selling cannabis to Canadians, but that can't be the only option, right? It's got to be like beer, where, yeah, there's little bats and the Molsons and the whatever, but there's also hundreds of microbreweries, and you can brew your own beer in your own basement if you want to, and you can go to a U-brew place, and they'll brew it for you with your help and that. So there's all these different kinds of options, and we need that for cannabis as well. And it does worry me that because people want legalization to be a new form of prohibition, but the difference being that it's my guy who's selling everybody marijuana instead of the Hells Angels. But if you try to grow your own, we're going to bust you. And if you try to get your own little company going, we're not going to let you. That's not really legalization. That's just a different form of prohibition, and one that I really think we need to strive to avoid.
Well, speaking of little businesses, that's what we is here, and we got a little business to take care of, and then we're going to come back and pick up where we left off here at Time for Hemp. Are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Indigrow is your source for affordable induction grow lighting. First discovered in 1891 by Nikola Tesla, Indigrow lights deliver 11 years of electronic sunlight to your plants. Indigrow lamps require less than half the power of traditional HID lamps. Converting to Indigrow lights means you'll cut down on your power bill with less lighting. Indigrow lamps also use 5 times less mercury than traditional fluorescent or HID lamps, making Indigrow not only energy efficient but environmentally friendly as well. No more switching out lamps between vegetative and flowering stages. As nature intended, your lights get a steady dose of UV light. That makes your plants grow healthier and stronger. Indigrow products are manufactured in San Diego, California, and come with a written 10-year warranty. What Tesla knew, then growers know now, is that Indigrow lighting is the cost-effective addition to your victory garden. To learn more or order now, go to inda-grow.com. That's INDA-GRO.com, or call 877-452-2244 to answer any of your questions. These guys really know lights. Indigrow really is your sunlight in a box.
This may sound strange, but I want to pay taxes. See, I don't drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes. I relax with something science has proven is much safer, marijuana. And I want to buy it somewhere that charges taxes to pay for schools and roads, just like alcohol and tobacco. What do you think should profit? Are schools and roads or drug dealers?
Visit the Marijuana Policy Project Foundation at joinmpp.org or call 1-877-JOIN-MPP.
Ganja, baby. Yeah, 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 yeah. I am a ganja baby, a ganja lady. I love to burn, 'cause I love to learn. The weed opens up my mind, and I ain't blind. It's not a crime to blaze the marijuana. the chalice. Soon me be like ganja palace in a wonderland like the one Alice love the cannabis. Why? I am a ganja baby. Sometime me friend them call me ganja lady. Smoking zest, it's no buts, no maybe. Blazing every day, every day. Yeah. I am a ganja baby. Baby, friend them call me ganja lady. Lady, it's no buts, no maybe. Blazing every day, me ganja crazy. The herb is so rare. If you have it in abundance, please come and share. Let the smoke go up to the air, 'cause we don't care. We have no fear to blaze the marijuana. Up the child, we're blaze the sentimental. Blaze up the key. Love when she fat and sticky. She pretty and me love her straight to nitty gritty itty. I am a ganja baby. Sometime me friend them call me ganja lady. Smoking, smoking, baby. Blazing every day, every day. Ganja baby, ganja lady. It's no buts, no maybe. Every day to me ganja crazy. Success is the best in the north, south, the east and the west. Relieve the stress and no other thing can test. Give me the herb, it's good for the nerve. Helps me to observe round the corner and curve. I see Babylon try come fi mash it down. Me ganja business, them wa crash it down. Sense this, sense that, and me hash it down. For this one me a forget ganja, come na play around.
Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Have you visited timeforhemp.com? We're doing something special you'll love to see. We're presenting a live stream of multiple cannabis gardens around the clock in high definition. Come see it now. Lots of people talk about growing cannabis. We do it. Join our growing audience to get inspired by our crops to learn how to cultivate yours. Because at Time for Hemp, we plant seeds of wisdom so we can harvest buds of truth.
At Crop King Seeds, we sell the finest marijuana seeds in the world, including White Widow, Blueberry, Purple Kush, Haze Extreme, and so many more. Our seeds are available for direct order with speedy shipping. Crop King Seeds are also sold in over 100 locations worldwide.
Excuse me, I'm looking to buy some Crop King seeds.
Look no further, my friend.
Wow, they're here and in so many strains.
Buy your seeds now, in-store or online at CropKingSeeds.com.
Yes, stay alert with consciousness. Realize that your freedoms stop when the next person's freedoms begin. So don't be rude and interfere with the path that someone else is traveling on. I would also encourage you to put one foot in front of the other and get out that door and get active and involved in your community. Look, if you don't really want to get involved in trying to end marijuana prohibition, well, my attitude is well, screw you. You should. But if you don't, find something else to get involved with. Helping dogs and cats find homes, helping old people get haircuts and to and from the doctors. I don't care. There's a world out there around you. And if you're involved in helping it, it will only help you. With that said, I'm going to pass this joint chat back over to my joint friends here on the Big Joint broadcast at Time for Hemp.
No worries. I heard through the wind that your Vancouver 420 celebration is moving to a new location after several years in the same site.
Yeah, well, we've been doing 420 in Vancouver for 22 years now. It's actually the world's oldest ongoing April 20th marijuana celebration. And we do it at the Art Gallery, downtown Vancouver, which is a fine spot, but one that we've really overgrown. We get so many people there, we end up blocking traffic for several blocks in every direction. People can't even get into the crowd to participate. And our celebration is really unique around the world in that there's like over 100 booths, and they're all selling marijuana quite openly. It's like a beautiful farmer's market, a lot of cannabis products available. We get, a peak of about 25,000 people and probably double that throughout the day. But we're going to move it to a new spot. It's called Sunset Beach. It's the traditional gathering place for large events in Vancouver. But it's causing a big uproar here as well. There's a Parks Board, which is separate from the City Council in Vancouver, and the Parks Board runs the parks, and they're complaining about us coming there because they have anti-smoking bylaws in their parks, and of course we're not going to be following those anti-smoking bylaws. But really, we get along well with the city. We all work together to make it a safe, positive event. We've talked to the police, and they've said they have no intention of enforcing the anti-smoking bylaw on that day any more than they have any intention of enforcing the laws against trafficking marijuana on that day either. So they normally only send just a very small number of police down to help with traffic and that kind of thing. But it's a beautiful celebration. It's going to be huge, and we're really looking forward to being on Sunset Beach for the first time. I think we're going to be bigger and better than ever. We're going to sell a lot of marijuana to a lot of people. We're going to smoke a lot of marijuana, and at 420, we traditionally give away several hundred joints as well and have a big smoke-in moment, and we all light up our reefers and celebrate cannabis at 420 on 420, and it's a unique Vancouver tradition that has really grown from nothing, from a few people gathering at a local park 22 years ago. Every year it's gotten bigger and bigger, and so now we've gotten so successful we're moving to a wonderful new location.
That's awesome to hear. I have had the pleasure of being able to attend one of your events, or that event one year. I happened to be in Vancouver, and it was awesome. I got to say, I just feel so left out here in good old Calgary, Alberta, because we're so far behind you, but hopefully we catch up here in the very near future. And I wish you lots of luck, of course, with the new spot. I'm not familiar with it, but it's certainly, when you put beach in the name, it sounds like a great place to have a little get together.
Oh, it's a beautiful spot, very grassy, and there's kind of a natural amphitheater feeling to it, and there's a beach right there, and a lot of room for overspill, so depending how big the event gets, there's plenty of room to grow without people having to stand in the middle of the street to participate. So yeah, that's all very positive and very exciting.
Absolutely. But the Vancouver one, like you say, with the giveaway of the cannabis at 420 and people openly selling cannabis, that type of thing. It just doesn't happen a lot of places around the world. So, it's great.
Not.
It's unfortunate, but maybe Canada can become somewhat of a leader in that. And like you say, hopefully we can keep things on track and keep it out of the hands of just a few people and make it for the people. I'm excited to what's to come, and I'm definitely going to get on to the petitions, and I encourage and urge like-minded Canadians to also take a look and please put your put your vote in or sign up for the petition. And let's keep it going the way that it always has been, sort of by the people for the people. And woohoo! Get out and support your 420 events. Vancouver, you're already out there. For anybody that happens to be listening here in Calgary, yes, we actually do have an event in 420 or on 420. Calgary 420 puts the event on, and we do it actually right from City Hall. Obviously, it's a much smaller event, but we do a little march. We go down Stephen Avenue Mall from City Hall, about 8 to 10 blocks, and then we turn around and come back. So, please come out and support us and let the government know, or show the government that we want this to happen as soon as possible.
Right on.
Excellent. Are we expecting the same type of crowd? It's advertised well, all that kind of stuff in Vancouver?
Oh, yeah, the Vancouver event's going to be bigger than ever, I think, on our end. It's going to be huge. The fact that there's some controversy with the Parks Board complaining about us coming is only really just getting us in the news more and making sure everybody knows to go to the new spot. And it's only about a 10-minute walk between the two locations, and I think we're actually even going to hire a little shuttle bus to go back and forth. So anybody who shows up at the art gallery and is confused, they can wait a few minutes, and we'll have a little bus to pick them up and drive them over to the beach and have that going back and forth.
That's really
so.
Awesome.
We'll make sure everybody gets there and has a good time.
Cool. Yeah, that's really awesome. I'm glad to hear. It makes me want to come out there, but of course I'm, I like to support the local stuff, so I'm here with the Calgary 420 and helping out as much as we can there. Our whole crew here, we believe in it big, and unfortunately we don't get the same types of crowds out that you guys do, but at least we do get some people out there.
Hey, ours just started with like 36 people though too, right? So every year it got bigger and bigger, and as long as you're getting bigger every year, then you're on the same track, right? So I think just keeping the pressure on, keeping it going, build the momentum, and you'll see amazing things happen everywhere in the country.
I agree with you, but we've done it. I've been going to it, attending it here in Calgary for several years, and it more has to do with the weather than anything. If we have poor weather, we have a poor turnout. And it really seems to have an impact for some reason on our city. I know not as much in other places, but weather can be fairly unpredictable at that time of the year here. And we can be fairly, a nice, beautiful day to there could be snow that day, or certainly rain, or we're certainly in cooler temperatures. So unfortunately, all you fair-weathered smokers, we know whether you're not coming if the weather's no good, but hopefully all the other people out there don't mind. I mean, we deal with it all year round. What's another day out in the snow before spring comes along? So we expect to see you all out there, anybody who's listening.
We got to move 420 to the summertime somehow. It is a bit chilly in Canada at the end of April, but what can you do?
Well, we do have the 710 movement, but I don't know if you can, if that's a good transition or not. But certainly July is a much more favorable month generally as far as weather's concerned.
Yeah, in Vancouver, we also celebrate Cannabis Day on Canada Day on July 1st. We do some stuff there, but that's a much smaller event. I mean, 420 for Vancouver anyways is our premier cannabis event, and we can only have so many of those every year.
You bet. And what about the march, the marijuana march? You get a fairly good attendance there as well?
It's not really. That one's never really been that big in Vancouver. We only normally get maybe a couple of hundred people out for that one. We have a nice march, and we go down the street and get our word out. But 420 has really grown here, whereas in Toronto, I know that the Global Marijuana March was really the largest event, although 420 has been getting bigger there. But, the Global Marijuana March, for a while and it's still a big thing all around the world, but I think it's lost some of its momentum, and that April 20th is kind of picking up some of that. But in Vancouver, that's not a very big one. The 420 is the huge event. Cannabis Day is the second one, and the Global Marijuana March is small. I think because at 420 and at Cannabis Day, people set up booths and sell a lot of marijuana openly, and at 420 we give it all away too. But for the Global Marijuana March, we're sort of marching down the street. It's more of a political focus. There's a little less cannabis for sale, kind of festival atmosphere, and I think people just haven't heard about it as much, whereas 420 is the real buzzword. So yeah, but those are the three big events in Vancouver.
Well, as you say, running 22 years, that's phenomenal. And like you say, I have had the pleasure of attending it there. And yes, it was just packed with people. And I recall, actually, I believe it was Mark Emery come walking by and gave me a joint as he was walking by. I don't think he recognized me standing there. But, yeah, it was awesome. And just to see just so, it's peaceful. There's never seems to be any problems there other than when they want to arrest some people.
The only real problems are drunk people that show up who are ill behaved, but that's pretty minimal compared to the hugeness of the crowd. And the problems we have sometimes are just because the crowd is so big and dense, people feel uncomfortable. It's like being in the middle of a giant mosh pit or something. So I think those problems will be solved with the new one. And here's a little trivia. I'm the only person who's been to all 22 420s in Vancouver over the years. I was at the very first one, I was at the last one, and I haven't missed any. Mark Emery would have been able to say the same thing, but he went to jail for a few years in the U.S., of course, and so they didn't let him out for special trips to 420, unfortunately. So he had to miss a few. So I'm the only person who's been to every single one.
You would think he'd be allowed out for special events.
Yeah, you'd think they'd let him out to come to Vancouver for 420. I mean, come on, what kind of monsters are they? But yeah, it didn't work out like that. So he missed a couple, but I've been to every single one, I'm proud to say.
Well, we're down to the last minute or so. This is a good time to give a shout-out to favorite URLs. We'll start with our joint guest first. Dana?
Well, cannabishistory.ca is where you can find my history book. Harry Pothead, HARYPOTHEAD.net gets you to the Harry Pothead book. And my website's Dana Larson, LARSEN.com, and you can find out more about me there. And, yeah, check it all out.
And Kelly?
For those of you that didn't hear the first time around, it's Kelly, Kelly, at kdkwholesale.ca for a free vaporizer to qualified medical patients.
And I want to remind people that we are 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week broadcasting network with over 20 hosts dedicated to ending prohibition. All our programming is free to download. Go to the archive pages on the timeforhemp.com website, and you'll find every MP3 that's available to be downloaded and shared with your friends. Also, make it a point to check out our apps if you've got smartphones or tablets that you travel around the world with. You can grab a iHeart app or an iTunes app or a SoundCloud or a Tumblr or whatever, and you'll be able to find Time for Hemp and enjoy us on the go. Well, with that said, remember the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's Time for Hemp.